It is a beautiful day outside. I just got done all of my homework for the entire weekend, and I've got a transmission that needs a home. Let's get started.
This video took way longer than I was expecting it to, but here's a brief overview of everything that's happened over the last couple weeks. This is my 700R4 and MP241C from my 1991 Chevy K1500. I got it from a junkyard for $200. I don't know anything about them or what's happened to them. All I know is that the motor they were attached to was in an engine fire. Let's get them in their new home.
And this, hopefully, is going to be their new home. I've got my Chevy 350 from a 1980 Corvette that I started in the last video. But you notice I'm missing one piece. Right about here, there's supposed to be a cross member that holds up the trans. But mine's sitting over there. So let's get that in place.
The first step was to tap in the rubber end caps of the transfer case drop kit, and then we could bolt in the transmission pan with those drop pieces. Next came the task of installing the transmission. I stacked up some cinder blocks to sit it on so I could slip underneath and install the new filter, new gasket, and pan. And then I quickly realized there was no way I was going to be able to lift it up by myself, so I came up with a new plan. Using some hydraulic help, I shimmied the trans and T-case over onto the blocks, scraped off the old gasket with a razor blade, and bolted the new pan on. Next came the ordeal of actually getting the trans between the frame rails. My buddy came over and we got to work. We wrapped the trans up with some chains to get it off the blocks, bolted the torque converter onto the flex plate, and after about 2 hours of jiggling and shaking and jamming and getting frustrated, we finally got them mated together and bolted together. And after lowering it down, I quickly realized that it was not sitting on the mount and it was in fact sitting on the transfer case. This transfer case was so much bigger than the old MP231 that used to be in there that it was the first thing to hit the cross member rather than the trans mount. So I decided, rather than getting some sort of custom cross member or some sort of custom trans mount, I would have to space the mount away from the trans to get more clearance. And while I was thinking about the best way for me to do that, I threw on a new dipstick and new tube for the transmission because the old one had a little bit of a leak. After that little brain break, I then spaced out the mount with an excessive amount of washers and drilled some holes in the pan for the studs to sit. I then lowered it down, and of course I was not lucky enough for it to line up with my markings, but after a quick shake, it all fit in just fine. I then took a hole saw to drill some holes in the bottom of the pan in order to access those studs, and I drilled some holes in the side of the pan so the nuts could fit all the way up on those studs, but unfortunately for me at that point, the Swiss cheese that I had going was definitely not the strongest material. So I came up with an idea to support the entire mounting area. I'm going to get a piece of 1/8 inch sheet steel, which of course they don't have in stock anywhere locally around here, so I'm going to get a piece of 1/16 sheet steel, cut it in half, and double it up to keep the strength. I'm then going to mark holes for the 2 studs and 6 bolts to hold the entire system together, drill all 8 of those holes with the plates in place, take them off, sand them, prime them, and paint them. I then learned that cleaning a painted surface with carb cleaner is a terrible idea and it causes the paint to bubble, but luckily this is in a spot where no one's going to see it and it didn't really matter. And then I could finally set everything back together. I then ran out to Tractor Supply and bought all my bolts and everything I would need. I bolted absolutely everything together, made sure everything fit, and then tightened everything down at once until my elbow popped like a torque wrench, and finally I was done. But I didn't want the video to end there.
Now it's not quite dark out yet, so I don't know a single better way to end this video than to wheel this Jeep, which now finally sits again on its own 4 wheels, outside into the driveway so we can take a look at it. Well, there she is, out in the daylight. Engine and trans, finally in it. I think that's all I have for today. Thank you all so much for watching. I apologize this video took me so long to get out, but I could not be happier with the outcome. This thing is rock solid. It looks a little sketchy, but physically and structurally, I think it's going to be fine. Check back next time when I get that body prepped and ready to go back on this frame and everything starts to look more like a Jeep. I'll see you next time on No Guarantees.